Happy New Year.
Woo!
Uh,
It's 2024. All right. I know everybody was out all late last night. Maybe
I know.
you haven't even gone to bed yet, and you're catching us on the Monday Rundown. We're happy to have you here. Or if this is January 2nd and you're watching the Monday Rundown, welcome. We're happy to have you. Happy New Year to you.
Say that.
Hope that all of you have a prosperous, healthy, full of love, amazing year ahead. The future is bright and we're really excited for it. If this is the first time that you're with us here on the Monday Rundowns, welcome. This is the day and show where Winston and I get to talk about all the things that we don't get to talk about on Wednesdays. And
Hmm.
we listen to content creators and thought leaders about what their thoughts are for the topic of the day or the question of the day. And we love sharing these things with you. So continue to, or when I say share these things, we love to share what we learn with you. And so
Yeah,
continue to send us the questions that you have so we can continue to bring them up and share and learn together.
absolutely. I think today's topic is going to be something that a lot of people, especially because of what today is, typically, I'm sure you've sat down, you've made your resolution list. And so today's topic probably falls right in line with that. So let's jump into the question for today.
How can feedback help us succeed in 2024? Interesting. How can feedback help us succeed in 2024? I'm going to start off by saying there is an amazing book called Thank You for the Feedback that I read about 3 years ago.
Okay.
And I think that most people don't like feedback because they think it's a critique. And critique to me typically is people say like a positive critique or negative critique. Okay, sure. But honestly, the word critique, I feel like in today's day and age, and the way that my students take critique is that it is typically negative. They don't necessarily, I've very rarely heard a student or seen a student hear the word critique and think it's about to be positive. They typically see the word critique
Yeah,
as
that's true.
negative. And so I think the biggest reason for that is because when people hear feedback or a comment on something that you have done or how you've performed or what you have said or who you are as a person, the reaction is one of defense because people feel like it's an attack on their personality or who they are as a person, really, or their character.
Hmm.
And so because they feel like it's an attack, they immediately get defensive and are not listening to what the person is saying. So what I loved about Thank You for the Feedback is that it shares how to actually give feedback. Because one, people don't know how to give it. I think
I was going to
to a
say,
certain
yeah,
degree,
that's
everybody
big.
thinks that they just have an opinion, right? And they think their opinion is feedback. So one, how to give a feedback, and then also two, how to receive it. And if you know how to give feedback, that means you know what type of feedback you like. So if you can tell
Yeah.
someone, I actually really appreciate feedback like this, then it actually can be extremely productive and can help to make someone have a lot of success in areas where maybe they were struggling or they're trying to figure out, or like maybe they didn't even know, right? Like you don't know what you don't know. And so someone gives you feedback about something that you had no clue about. Maybe you take that feedback and then use it in a way that like completely gives you a lot of success in whatever area that is, your love life, your business life, and everything in between. So here are the three different types that Thank You for the Feedback highlights. One is essentially affirmative. So it's feedback
Hmm.
that it identifies all the things that you have done well and affirms all of those things that you have done well. The other one
Hmm.
is coaching. This is the type of feedback that tells you specifically how to do things. So I saw you did this, and so maybe a better way might be to do it this way in like with these steps, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's called coaching. And then the third one is
Hmm.
evaluative. And that way,
Evaluative, yeah.
yeah, and that is a way
Hmm.
in which someone has like a criteria, like a list of like you need to do X, Y, and Z. And it's like you didn't do this, but you did do this, and you did do this, and you didn't do this. And so it just kind of like evaluates whether you did or didn't do something. And it's just kind of like straightforward, almost like data-driven feedback in that way. So it's
Mm.
it may not necessarily be good or bad. It's just kind of like you did it, you didn't do it, and it's just kind of like an evaluative form. Some people prefer two of them, one of them, all three of them. And so it's important, I think, once you recognize the different types that exist, what types you like to receive. And also, of course, you may have a preference as to what types you like to give as well.
Wow, that's so funny. So immediately when the question came up, what I thought of was the fact that there are people who the not knowing how to give feedback is probably the biggest in the biggest thing that's creating some of the conflict you talk about when giving it. And some, I don't know where I read this or heard, but it was something to the effect of first start with the positive things you took away from someone, or to your point, if you were to highlight, hey, here's what you did well. Yeah, so here are the things you did well. And then being careful in the choice of words you use to separate emotional things, for meaning, well, I felt like you, just be, to your point, be try and be clear on letting the person know what you think they could do differently. So again, avoiding words like better. So you hear something you could do differently doesn't put it in that negative connotation that better would imply there was something worse. Does that make sense? So just the choice of words is big. But I remember, again, from what I remember, and maybe this was Crucial Conversations, but I'm not sure. So let me not get into that. But it was just the idea that starting out by stating what this person did well, and then adding on at the end what you think they could do differently, would be the one of the ways that you could give someone some positive, or give someone some feedback that wouldn't necessarily create any negative repercussions or have that person feel poorly. Because I know that I never thought of it like that. To your point, I find that I'm okay receiving just critical feedback. So it's like, hey, Winston, this is what I would do better. And I never thought that was a big deal to anyone else, because I always thought of it as, oh, this person is trying to help me do something and make myself, improve in this area. The other part, though, that does come up is who is giving the feedback. And I don't know. I do think that, especially in the world we live in now, where many people, to your point, Janelle, could comment or write to you, or have an opinion, especially like even what we do on this platform. I've seen people in the comments sometimes, and I'm like, why did you even say that? But if, depending on who that person is, I can laugh off a lot of that stuff, as opposed to someone who, a troll or somebody who's just out there just to say something for the sake of it. As opposed to, we've had a lot of actually great guests, and I remember even in our first episode, you and I sought feedback in order to make the show better from the outset, because we'd come from, I think, a culture that was something that we were accustomed to. Hey, on that last presentation you did, you said this over this slide as opposed to this. And I think we got earlier on in that whole journey, getting comfortable with the idea of, hey, someone's going to watch you and you're trying to teach others around you. So there has to be this space where you could go back and forth and say what it is, or be told, hey, this is something that I would do differently. Hey, when this audience is in front of you, if you're talking to this group of people, maybe highlight these trips as opposed to this one. So things like that, I think, was helpful for us to get into that, or to be in that space around those type of people early on.
And I would just comment, that was a lot of coaching. The feedback we
got
was,
Oh, there you go.
And so when I heard you saying like, oh, well, I appreciate it, it's like, yeah, because Winston appreciates the feedback that's coaching feedback. Some people hate affirmative feedback. They're like, I don't care what I did right. Like, tell me action steps for things that I can do differently. And so the evaluative part is the better or not. So you can say something is like a better way to do it. Again, if it's an evaluation, it's like, is there a way to get this done more efficiently or effectively? And if there is a better way, then that's an evaluation. It's like, you did it a particular way, not that it was bad, but is there a way to be more effective or efficient? There is, actually. And then the coaching kicks in. This is how you would do that. Again, I love it. I love learning what feedback can be, and that there's actually a way to give it, and different types, because it speaks to an individual nature in which people also like to receive feedback as well. So I love that.
And that's actually a great point, because I come from a culture of coaching, whether it's personal training or even just before this. So that makes sense to me based on what you just said. I'm sure most athletes or people who've been in that type of sports arena stuff, that's so normal to them to be working with a trainer or a coach. And I would say most successful business people who have, whether it's advisors or, we've talked about even getting a business coach. So I would say that really does depend on what you're looking to achieve. I think that would also probably play a role in what type of feedback works for you.
Agreed.
All right, who we got on the docket today?
Oh, we got our man, Simon Sinek, coming back again for New Year's Day, giving us some good news about feedback. I'm really excited. Can't wait to hear what he has to say on the subject. And here we go.
Who recognizes and rewards feedback is going to encourage more feedback. So if I ask for feedback and say I'm open to it, and then somebody gives it to me, and I either defend myself, criticize them, or reject it, then I'm creating an environment in which no one's going to give me feedback, or at least they won't give me honest feedback. They're just going to tell me how great I am. Whereas if somebody gives me negative feedback, I don't have to listen to it. I don't have to agree with it. But if I can encourage it, I go, thank you, tell me more. Go on, yes, thank you. Oh, this is really helpful, thank you. So the leader will create the conditions. And if people can see that happen, if they see a young officer, by the way, there's a difference between respectful and disrespectful feedback. Okay. And to maintain esprit de corps and maintain the rank structure, it can be done respectfully. Sir, can I give you some feedback? Yes, you can. Or can we do it later? Or let's do it in my office, right? As opposed to, hey, let me tell you what I think. That's disrespectful because you're not evaluating the situation that maybe that officer, that more senior officer or NCO has in mind. So may I give you some feedback? Asking permission is how it starts. May I give you some feedback? And if they say no, okay, then I know my place, right? But a good leader, a good NCO or a good officer will want to receive it and create conditions in which it's welcomed, and then it'll get encouraged. And then what you're doing is you're creating a culture of feedback. Can you give me some feedback of how I can improve? Oh, you're great. Well, that's not true. There's always room for improvement. Can you please tell me that? I want that. And again, if the leader asks for it, instead of just waiting to be given it, the leader says, I like some feedback, how I can do better. And you create a form for it. In this meeting, we're going to talk about what we as an organization can do better, or how I can do better as a leader. So I want all of your answers. And I've done this with my organization, where when you have those sessions, even if you agree or disagree, even if the leaders are triggered, you're in receiving mode. Go on, tell me more. And if you don't understand, you can ask follow-up questions, but please tell me more. Go on, yes. And it's just taking it all in, right? Then the next day, when people have emptied their buckets, then you can say, okay, yesterday we talked about what we can do better and what I can do better. Now I want to talk about where we can do better and what you think you can do that we can improve this. And now it's all positivity and moving forward because I've had the opportunity in the forum to get all the junk out already. So to separate those two, I think it's very important to separate the emptying of the bucket and the looking forwards, because you can't do it in the same meeting. There's too much emotion.
Great point. Wow.
Okay, so really, really quickly, our program where we have students, we actually have class meetings where the students provide feedback. It ends up being just like a venting session. They end up just complaining. Well, it sounds like they're just they have no, there's no coaching. It's just like, this was wrong and it was really stupid when this happened and this, like, it's just, right? And sometimes it's about us, like in the room, like about what we could do better. And I just think, oh, that's so interesting. Wouldn't it be nice to have a follow-up meeting to that? And it's like, okay, we got all that out now. Like, now what do we think that we could do all together, including you as students, to help make this, to improve your educational experience, because you're a part of that in adult education. It's not all on us. Anyway, thoughtful. I really, really like that. And I really like that it's when a leader opens up space, right?
Yeah,
that allows for people to see, like, oh, they're interested in learning and improving. They don't think that they're perfect, right? Like, they're also trying to grow. And so I feel like that creates growth for everybody, or space for everybody to grow. That's cool.
No, I agree. And I know, guys, he was specifically remarking to something in I'm not sure if it's the Navy, the Army, or which division of the military he was referring to, because I know he used words like officer, and there was another term that he used that I'm assuming is a military term. But I'm sure you could recognize that what he was saying could be applied throughout. One of the biggest things for me was the permission part. And there's a few things we've listened to from Simon already where the permission, like even in the one where he talked about having difficult conversations, and he often talks about just this idea of getting permission before you move forward is such a big deal. And I think just even for myself, where I've used it and had it used, I think it shows a sense of respect to each other where we do things like that, or when you do something like that, to say, hey, there's something I'd like to say to you, or like, but is it okay if I do it? Because it allows the person to maybe take a moment and go, do I really want to have a conversation like this right now? And again, and then the part that I took a lot of value from was it helped me realize I don't, just because I feel like something needs to be discussed then and there, it doesn't always make it okay for that to happen, you know. And there are so many conversations where I'm sure, had I given someone that respect, that it probably would have played out a lot differently. Actually, I'm sure, I'm actually not even doubting that, I'm sure it would have played out a lot differently than me just saying what I thought needed to be said in that moment. And that's something that I think I'm sure I was taught. It's like, oh, if something's on your mind, that's the way you just got to come out and say it. And that doesn't really give mutual respect, which is what I'm wanting from someone. If that's what I want, I should start by giving it first. So that was I really loved what Simon had to say. You're muted, Jay.
That's awesome. I love that. This has been wonderful. If you got anything out of today's conversation, please let us know in the chat. Do you feel like you are in a place, or are you fostering a culture of feedback? Let us know. Until next Monday, as always, remember that you deserve the good life. Say that.
Say that. Have a great rest of your year.